Good afternoon, everybody. Now, my challenge today is to keep this to an hour. Good luck. So, without any further ado, please put your hands together, as in clapping, not praying, for the Reverend Lima. Welcome, Luiz. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Right, now, you were born in 1980.
Hello.
I know. You're a receiver by the sea. And you were the youngest of 3 children.
Yep.
So you had an older brother and an older sister. Dad was a civil engineer. And your early life, yeah, can you hear? Is that all right? You're all right to hear? Should I just hang on, I'll do this. So, your early life in Brazil, tell us about your sort of lifetime up to about the age of 11. What was that like?
So childhood there was incredible, I have to say that. We were very close to the sea, and literally to get to the local beach it would be about 10-15 minutes drive, and we did that every weekend. It was part of our lifestyle. And so growing up with playing football by the sand, countless times digging holes and digging my dad into a sand hole, hoping that the waves would come crash on him and he would just burst to that. And of course I do that with my boys now as well. And surfing, beach volleyball, snorkeling. We did so much that was sea-oriented as such. It was a fantastic childhood.
Excellent. And school, what was that like? Were you hard-working?
I was one of those annoying children that didn't work very hard, but got good grades.
Makes you sick, doesn't it?
But after a certain stage, then of course things they pick up with actually working a bit harder. But the interesting thing is, at the age of 11, when I moved to secondary school, I found myself struggling. Because I was far more interested in friends, in playing, and just enjoying life, and just getting the good grades and everything. And as I started at secondary school, we get a greater host of subjects. And in Brazil, if you have 4 exams per subject per year in Brazil, and you have to achieve a minimum of 70%. And if you don't get 70% as an average, you actually fail the whole year, and you are left behind. So all your friends continue, and you have to repeat the year. So I think after the second exam, I found myself lagging behind under the 70%. For the first time ever in my life that happened. And I was like, ouch. And of course, the subjects that I was lagging behind were, and don't throw things at me, they were maths and English.
So nothing's changed much.
So, but of course I picked up, and I think I finished with 90% or something like that.
Excellent. So your teenage years were sort of quite influential for you. Tell us, before we sort of go into thinking about sort of your Christian life, sort of the area was quite dodgy, wasn't it, where you lived, or some of the time? Tell us about it. Tell us about your first car.
Yes. The 1990s wasn't very long ago, okay? And you need to appreciate that the cultural difference between Brazil in the 90s to what it is now, it's already a changed country, but certainly very different to life here in the UK as we know it. And so crime was very, very rife in Brazil at the time I was a teenager. It didn't stop us from living, we just knew how to avoid getting into trouble. So for example, if you were traveling by public transport, you need to be very careful not to have watches at display. And at the time, I forgot to take my watch off. And as I left the bus stop to go back home, these 3 lovely men saw my watch and decided to ask me for that watch. They did punch me a couple of times to get the watch, so crime was there, and of course I experienced that myself. And so we found ways, and there were cultural ways that you would do to avoid having crime affecting your life. One of them, for example, in the night, you wouldn't stop in the traffic lights. So of course you stop in traffic lights, and the law is you stop in traffic lights. But past 8, 9 o'clock p.m., you wouldn't stop, the traffic would be lighter, and as such you would just slow down as if it was a yellow traffic light, even if it shows red, and you just go through if you can go through. And that means that if it stops you from bringing the car to a still point, and maybe people in the streets coming with guns to stop you there. And one of the ways to avoid the crime was whilst the law for driving was 18, one of the ways which was culturally accepted, even though not rigid by the law, was to allow teenagers to have their cars younger than they should. So my first car I had at the age of 15, and I mean, it was great. It was wrong, but it was great.
So in your teenage years, your parents sort of discovered Christ, and you discovered alcohol. Tell us that there were a couple of stories you told me about you and sort of overindulgence.
That's it. So in the summer, which in Brazil is in January, we'll normally go to a beach house and spend the summer there. So we had a large family, and we all descend to our family beach house. And then the parents would come and go as they could with work and holidays, and you know, a few uncles would stay, and my parents would stay. They would sort out a rota of kind of allegedly responsible adults to look after the teenagers. And one of those many occasions throughout one of the summers, whilst I was there, we went out partying, as we would do, and come back home and so on. And my uncle and auntie were in charge of that stint of time. And I just went to party with the friends for, I think throughout the week we went out every night. And I was quite a responsible young man. Jessica is here, and I need to be careful, otherwise I will end up sleeping in church tonight. But I was quite a responsible guy, and very often I was the one actually looking after, you know, the leftovers, if you like, the ones that had to be rescued. But at this one time, I was enjoying life a little bit too much, and I found myself, you know, having a few too many drinks over the week and so on. And I remember going out to party, and at some point I remember found myself in hospital with a drip in my vein, and the doctor looking at me less than happy about my behavior, and I was like, oh goodness, I've lost track of time here, and I hate needles, and I got one stuck in my vein. So the doctor just looked at me, he said, is that how you're going to carry on your life from now on? Now, I was a good teenager and everything, but I did enjoy life. But actually, at the age of 15, to have a responsible adult looking at you with total disapproval, and just asking that question, that really permeated in my heart. And I was like, no, that's not how I want to carry on my life. And of course I continued going parties, but you know, make sure that I didn't allow myself to exceed anything that I wouldn't think was appropriate.
There you go. Well, that's one of the stories he told me. I think we have our first bit of music. Luiz. Do you want to just talk us through your first piece of music?
As I told you just now, the sea is my life, and coming to the area actually is just so wonderful to have the beach nearby. And you know, I know Solent may not have the golden sand that you may imagine, but imagine that. Imagine the palm trees, and imagine you're there, arriving at the sea at 10 o'clock. The barbecue is going, the steak is just ready for you, and will be served from 10 to 10. Okay, and we'll be playing football on the sand and just celebrating life, and people would come and go. And this is the kind of music that has shaped my childhood and teenage years. And I hope you enjoy the guitar.
Yeah. Wouldn't you want to be there? Yes.
Life was so hard sometimes.
So hard. It makes you sick, doesn't it? Anyway, so as a teenager, your mother sort of was unwell and was sort of going through all sorts of difficulties, and then sort of heard the audible voice of God, which then sort of drove her to church, the voice saying, "You will be healed."
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of drove her into church, and your dad went along with her. So how did you get involved yourself?
So whilst that was happening, and occasionally we had to go. I mean, I was the youngest, but even my brother didn't manage to escape that. So we had to follow that journey of discovery, as my mother and my father, in some extent as well, were following God's voice literally, but actually trying to find a place of worship that they could actually be nurtured and discipled in the journey, because we were by then just nominal Roman Catholics. So we went to church once in a while, but really we weren't committed Christians as such. And so they found a church which happened to be an Anglican church, a Church of England church in Brazil. And that was an amazing church, about 5,000 to 6,000 people there, a youth group of 1,000 people. And that was a lovely place. I had no interest whatsoever at that time. I was more interested in partying. But having gone through that episode during my summer holidays, which coincided to my parents' own spiritual journey, my uncle, who was in charge of the house at the time, he said, "I must tell your parents that something has happened." Fair enough. But I'm not going to tell all the details. So I said, "Oh, thanks." So my parents knew that I owed them one. They didn't quite know the extent of it. So this is a secret. So that was it. I said, "Look, you have to do something for us, and you can play the keyboard very badly, by the way. And you are going to play with the youth band on this children weekend away. You're going to help them." And I said, "Oh, really? I don't really want to do that." And I said, "Well, do you want us to go and ask your uncle what actually you have done?" I said, "No, I'm in. That's fine." So I think for the next 3 months after that conversation, I started practicing with the youth band, and we went to this children's weekend away for children under 11. So there were about 300 children under 11 on that weekend away, in which the teenagers would be the main leadership team, and of course a few adults supervising the whole thing. And whilst in that journey, I was just going to the practices and being quiet, and they were praying, and I was just really quiet there. And suddenly, as we arrived at the weekend, all the talks were really pointing people to Christ, to acknowledge that actually Christ is more than just a thought. Actually, we can have a living relationship with Jesus, and that was a new thing for me. I had never heard that being preached. And somewhere along that weekend, my heart was really touched by that. And he was speaking to children, and of course by then I was 15. And so he said, "Oh, if you want to respond to that, I'll pray for you. Just come to the front." And I was literally to the side of the stage because I was part of the band, and I found myself totally moved to go and receive prayer. And it was probably the most embarrassing moment of my life. I mean, the best moment of my life, but the most embarrassing one. Dare I say the second best? Jessica's here. My marriage was my wedding. I love you, honey. I love you. But as I left the keyboards on the stage to come and receive prayer, then I realized that the 100 teenagers that were the leadership team, if you like, they all assumed that I was a Christian, because I kept quiet as they were praying. I kept quiet as they were reading the Bible. I was nodding in a wise, that sounds interesting. No one ever wanted to ask me if I was a Christian or not. So you could just see their face like, "What's he doing there? Oh, of course he's not." They were kind of realizing I wasn't a Christian after 3 months of being with me. So it was fantastic, but it was a little bit embarrassing, not to say the least. But from then on, my journey and relationship with Christ began, and has just grown from then on, in strength to strength.
Yes, so that's sort of your testimony, effectively. How many times do you think you've said that?
Not many, actually.
Oh, really?
Maybe once every 3 years, 4 years a year.
Oh, okay.
People just don't ask me to do things for them. They don't want to know about me.
Fair enough. So you spend quite a lot of time with youth, sort of in church in particular, and elsewhere. So you're working with that. Tell us about.
Yeah. So the church was a very large church, as you can tell, and I joined some worship teams because I could play, and very quickly I started leading those teams in terms of spiritual development. And we even created a kind of a Sunday outreach group. There are a few photos in the internet, but they remain secret password protected because there may be some embarrassing things. So we traveled a bit about the country, playing in some evangelistic gigs as well. One or two were quite large-sized ones as well.
So playing to how many roughly?
5,000-6,000 people occasionally. And opening shows for some larger ones as well. So that was good fun. And again, I was 16, 17, and just traveling around the northeast of Brazil.
Right, and dressed like you are now?
We had some special samba-like clothing, a bit like, if you like, contextualizing to what happened last night. If you were here with the Bulgarian ladies had their clothes, so something like that, but the Brazilian version of it. But you will never see a photo of that.
You say that, Ian. If you
He's joking, isn't he?
However, there is something that we haven't got, but it would be interesting to hear at some point, and I'm sure it exists, that you made a CD?
We did. It was the most bizarre thing ever. That we were found by this Christian musical director guy who thought in his madness that we were good enough. Clearly, he didn't know anything about music. And he sponsored all the costs for us to record a CD. And so that CD exists. I think Jessica's seen that, but I'm sure every copy I find I destroy very quickly.
I don't believe that. And one of these days we will hear that, I'm sure, because I'm sure you know where it is, and I'm sure you can put your hand on it exactly. Let's hear another piece of music, Luiz. What's your second choice?
So the next one is again another Brazilian song, but it's a Christian song, and it's a bit more, it's a bit dated, I think mid-90s again, but it says that the best of God is still to come. And that was a phrase that really coined a lot of my early ministry as a teenager in Brazil. And suddenly we found that being recorded by someone else who can play far better than me. And but actually that is such an important phrase of my life, that I truly believe that we believe in a God of new beginnings. There is always something new and better in Christ waiting for us.
So you were sort of heavily involved in youth ministry as a youth yourself, and then you're sort of approaching going to university. So you told me that so you went to a private school up until the time you go to university. There were two forms of university you could have gone to. One being a federal university, where you had to pass exams to get in, but then it was paid for, and then a private. Never mind, I'll make it up now. And then a private university where your parents or somebody would have had to have paid. So where were you likely to go of those two?
So that was my expectation and what was my parents' expectations. You need to remember that I was one of those annoying children and teenagers and young men who, for very little work, I got quite a lot of gain. So I remember preparing for the national exams, and if you got the highest marks in the country, you would get a full bursary for university. And I remember preparing all the forms for that. And my dad came to talk to me. You know when parents come with that pastoral face, like, are you alright? And I do that to Nathan Sebastian all the time. And so just want to let you know that if I have to pay for you to go to a private university, I'm prepared to do that, and we'll fork off the cost. Now you think that this is a kind father. This was the greatest insult of my life. Because really what he was saying is, I don't think you can make the cut. And he's like, thanks, Dad. And I said, no, that's all right, I'm fine. And there were two options, the federal, the national, and the county universities. The national one being the highest level one. And of course I passed, I got the great grades for both of them, which I probably was not very Christian in the way I smiled to my dad as that happened. So I was able to get to both universities.
Right. So it was a 5-year course, so you were expecting.
Yeah.
But that was interrupted. Tell us about, what were you doing at university first of all?
Mm-hmm. So it was a double degree, a combined degree in civil engineering and business management. That I went for, hence the 5 years in place. And life was going well. My father's company was a civil engineering company. And my brother had gone into electrical and electronic engineers. My sister had gone into nursing. My uncle had gone into nuclear physics. And so it was there for the taking, if you like. It was my path. I was very happy. I had a plan for life, and that was going to be it. So life was all sorted. I knew what to do. I was going to only contemplate getting married after I was 30, because I wanted to, do everything, settle down everything, and finish university and carry on working. So I would go to university from 7 up to 1 p.m. and then work in my dad's company from 1 to 7 p.m. and then go to church after 7 p.m. for whatever ministries I would be doing there. So that was my life for probably 2-3 years. And then what happened was Brazil moved into a time of financial problems, and the government was struggling a lot to pay the wages of anyone financed by government funding, and that included the universities. So the teachers told us that they would be going on strike. So they were telling us way in advance that was going to happen. And because we work in semesters in Brazil, that means that actually if you lose 2 or 3 weeks, really, you would have lost the whole semester. And so in looking ahead, I said, wait a second, I'm going to have at least 6 months at hand here. What am I going to do with that? And I thought, actually, I could just stay, carry on working with Dad, and that would be fine, but I could always do that. That was always safe there. And so I thought actually going abroad to get an experience of life elsewhere, to improve my English, might not be a bad idea at all. So it always started with that thought. And someone said, why don't you welcome a missionary from abroad into your house? Because that can prepare you for going abroad yourself.
If you don't mind, we'll come back to that in a little while.
Yep.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
Okay. But you went to America?
I went to Canada.
Canada.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that's it. So the university went on strike, and so I ended up in Canada, in Toronto, for 6 months, and I was working there for a church that's well known, and some people loved it, and some people find it quite strange. And it's a church called the Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship. And some of you would have heard of that for the Toronto Blessing, which was quite big in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I had the most wonderful time there and met some huge godly people and saw God working in some amazing ways. In contrast, I also saw some things that I would offer a critique, that I wonder what the wisdom of it was. And some of you probably know what I'm talking about. So it was a wonderful time, and I still have people there who I talked to all those years on. It was a time of great blessing, where actually God's voice was speaking more clearly to me about my own future.
And you sort of fell in love with English at that point, would you say?
Yes, so by then I had spent a lot of time already studying English in school. I had spent a lot of time translating songs in English, worship songs as well. But my heart opened up more to the English language for a different reason as well.
We'll come to that in a second. So your next piece of music, Luiz.
Yeah, so I think I was about 12 or 13, and one of my best friends introduced me to a song that I thought, I really like this. And it talks about the sunshine, as you believe, as you would imagine, coming from me, but actually in a somewhat surprising context and part of the world.
So, getting back to the bit that we're really interested in. So, your church decided they would host, or your family were going to host somebody to come over and to live with you for a year, is that right?
Yep.
For a year. So tell us about that, what happened?
So that's it, I was planning it all, and as you're getting to know me, I just really was communicating to my family what was happening in my life, and my parents were crazy enough to say yes to most things in my life. I'm not so sure I'll be so empowering to my children as my parents were of me. But I said, look, there's this idea, let's host someone coming from England, and he will stay with us for a year, but he will probably just spend the weekends with us, spend most of the week in a project working with street children. And they said yes. It was a big house, a big home, and we have room here, yeah, let's go for it. And so Marcus came and spent a year ministry in Brazil, and we became best friends. And after the end of that year, he said, oh, my sister wants to come and see the projects that I'm working with. Can she come? I said, of course she can, we've got more rooms, come on, yeah, bring her in. And of course, that sister turned out to be my lovely Jessica. And now I'm treading on eggshells.
The thing is, I've got it all written down.
I know you do.
So, yeah, okay, so Jessica came to stay.
Yeah.
And then?
Well, she was, after all, my friend's sister. You know the drill, don't you? You just, that's forbidden territory. So, he said, but can you look after her? Can you make sure that she's well looked after? Because by then he...
Can I just interrupt just a second?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, because, and I quote this, you said, the moment she arrived, she could not take her eyes off me.
I'm sure the pair of upstairs is really comfortable. I like it up there. That's my sort of the version. I will stick with her version today. Oh, maybe it was something like that. But yeah, no, Jess was there and she really fell in love with me. I mean, I fell in love with her. And she arrived in Brazil and we just got on really really well, and Mark said, please look after Jessica, and because he was already going out with who is now his wife, so he was busy himself, let's put it. And so Jessica and I, went on everywhere together, and with all my friends, which were many, we had a very large group of friends, and that's where the hawks started around. I don't know if you get the expression. Because all my friends started, putting eyes on Jessica. What you need to understand is, whilst I'm 100% Brazilian, you appreciate that I probably am not the stereotypical looking Brazilian. And so Jessica, arriving in Brazil, would literally turn necks wherever she went. Her beautiful eyes, and her beautiful skin, she's just stunning. Come on, I know I'm the lucky one. And so all my friends are like, wow, I know. But the trouble is, we have this saying, and you forgive me because it's not a PC saying, okay? So there's a cultural dimension to this saying, that in the land of the blind, if you have an eye, you are king. Do you get that? Yeah. None of my friends could speak English properly. I could. No time to waste here. So, can you tell Jessica she looks beautiful? No. Can you tell her that her dress looks fine? Jessica, they really don't like what you're wearing now. And so she thought they were rude. But so she had no choice but talk to me.
And so how did it develop after that? Because obviously Jessica was going to go home,
Yeah.
back to England. So what happened?
That's it. After 6 weeks on her university holidays, she was going ready to come back to the UK. And we kind of swapped emails and swapped phones, because actually there was no Skype, there was no WhatsApp at the time. But I was kind of, I want to live a little bit longer. I don't want Marcus to kill me and all that kind of thing. So I remember taking her to the airport with Marcus and Tanner in the car as well, and said goodbye. And so let's keep in touch. And I just sat in the car. The only thing I allowed myself to say was, I'm really going to miss her. At which Marcus, who is a really godly man, just responded to slapping me in the head and said, "You idiot, what are you doing?" And I was like, "But it's your sister." So anyway, permission given to talk to him. He could have done that 2 weeks earlier, couldn't he? Let's face it. But Jessica and I kept in touch and talking, and as I was getting ready to go to Canada, we organized for Jessica to come to Canada, and by then we knew that we wanted to be together. We spent 6 weeks together. We were spending quite a few months talking, absolutely getting the most expensive phone bill that one can ever imagine. And so we met in Canada for the first time as probably going out. And from Canada, we had 2 weeks there, and that was really, really good. Niagara Falls, I'm impressed. I knew what to do. And then I came to the UK to meet her parents, and I think I said to your father something like, I'm still making my life, but I'm going to marry your daughter, so just give me some time. And the man, honestly, there should be a rule when you speak to your girlfriend's parents that this does not happen, but he just burst in tears, didn't he? And I was like, oh, he's so, I was like, oh. And then he said, I prayed that my daughter would find a Christian man. I just forgot to pray that he would be an Englishman. Honestly, I must have such an inferiority complex. Being totally undermined by parents and father and her father too. Also, they must be talking together. I don't know.
Just to sort of go out of chronologies for a second. Just talk about the birth of the boys, and then we'll come back to what happens sort of in between. So, do you want to just talk me through the birth of the boys, and then we have another bit of music?
Absolutely. So we got Nathan and Sebastian, 11 years old and 8. Amazing boys. There's only one problem with my boys, is that they seem to have a bit more energy than I do, and that's a bit unfair, but I can keep up with them. And honey, I drag you along as well when it comes to the energy levels. We have so much fun as a family. And they were a real blessing. They are a real blessing for us. And something that we cherish right from the beginning. Because I guess something that we don't talk a lot, and probably we as people don't talk a lot is actually the joy of family. Sometimes there's pain as well. And I remember Jessica and I were trying to have children. We found Jessica was pregnant. And that was before Nathan. And we found out actually that pregnancy wasn't successful. And Jessica really was hemorrhaging quite a lot. And I couldn't get hold of her parents. And of course I couldn't get hold of my parents who were in Brazil. I did manage to speak to my mother at some point, but we were in hospital. But Jessica really suffered, and of course we lost that baby. And that was quite something that we had to go together, and at the time, and taken to hospital and everything, and dealing with all the bleeding. It was a really hard time, and something that we probably don't talk a lot, but I know that sometimes, maybe once a year, maybe once in a while, often, actually my mind goes back to that occasion. And like, as a youngish man, I was like, I need to look after my wife. And of course, I wanted her to be safe and everything. And the doctors But actually there was also a life that I don't think will ever be forgotten, however short-lived that was. And I think sometimes guys are pretty bad, and I know I'm not the only person who has lived that, but actually I know that sometimes some guys came to speak to me about their own experience of miscarriage. Of course, the ladies are the ones who go through that. But actually it impacted as well. And sometimes maybe we are too martial, too brutal to actually speak about that. But that was something that we went through. And yet, with that life in mind, we've been given the most wonderful blessings in Nathan and Sebastian.
Yes. So, I mean, that was obviously a very painful time, and you can understand that. I'm sure there are people in the room that have experienced similar things and understand that. Talking being macho, though, the day that Nathan was born, you showed your real macho side, I understand.
Yes. I think I'm referring to the actual birth of Nathan. And Nathan, as he was born, the umbilical cord was around his neck a little bit. So I was with the great hope of cutting his umbilical cord. Of course, you can understand, yeah, that's my right, come on. And so as that was happening, and I could see Nathan was born, and I was kind of like, there it is, it's my chance now, come on. And I was going there, come on, I'm the dad, I'm here. This nurse, who was this size, she just shoved me like this, boom. And I was like, I just flew off over the theatre, the room, and of course they were very concerned to make sure that Nathan was breathing and everything else. So any aspect of being a Superman or a super macho man, that little lady took it all, and I have no pride left.
Excellent. Your next bit of music?
My next bit of music. Well, as I was introduced to the Beatles at a quite young age, and assumed that you all would know the Beatles by heart. And it's just a lie. So many British people just don't know about the Beatles at all. What a waste, come on. But I was also introduced to a band that led me through a journey of appreciation of a certain kind of music. And many of you would have heard of Dire Straits with yeah, look at that. Now I'm proud of you. With Mark Knopfler playing the guitar. But actually, if you know Dire Straits well, you know that actually there is a real treat, which is their piano player. And the combination of music is great. And that led me to Clapton, to Steve Vai, and to that ilk of guitar players and musicians. But most recently, that journey of that kind of music, I think 10 years ago, led me to a band which I keep going back to, which is called Dave Matthews Band. And their music expertise is just phenomenal. But it's interesting that, like most music, there is a room for the considerations of the aspect of life, the struggles of life, and actually our spiritual need as well.
So there's a chap called Jacques, who's French, I believe.
Yes.
And he had a word to say that he thought that you ought to be a youth minister in Bradford. And so that's what happened. You actually went to Bradford to be a youth minister there. What was it like living in Bradford?
The times I had been to the UK by then, Jessica and her family were very kind, and they took me to the Peak District, beautiful stuff, the lakes, Buckingham Palace, Warwick Castle.
They're not in the Lake District.
No. I was travelling around.
All right.
Yeah, it's full. Keep up with me here. And so they took me to all these beautiful places. And so as I discerned God's voice to come to the UK, and that we decided we would start our life here in the UK and leave behind all my plans in Brazil. And of course, I never came back to finish that final year of civil engineering business. So that was there on a pause, has been on a pause for the last 20-something years. And so in coming here, I was very excited to follow God's lead in my life. But I could have done with a little bit more warning about Bradford. And I had the privilege of serving in the south of Bradford in an area called Homewood, which I believe is one of the largest council estates in Europe alone. And I was meant to start there in October, which I think I ended up going there in November. I was a month late because the flat I was going to be living in had been broken into, and they not only took all the beds and everything else, they also took the whole boiler out. I mean, those thieves, they deserve a prize, for effort at least. So I couldn't go into the flat because there was no boiler, there was nothing really. So they had to get a bit more time to sort it out. And I think it was great for me because, of course, Jess was finishing her degree in psychology in Durham, and that allowed me a year on my own to really learn my ways here in England in my own right. But I've realized that actually, if there's ever a misconception that developed countries, or so-called developed countries, that you guys have it all sorted, actually that's not true, that we know that there is need, both physical and spiritual, everywhere we go, everywhere we go.
So what is it like being Brazilian in Bradford?
Now, you guys know better than me. I think it was in the 60s that Bradford really had a problem with racism, and you saw the segregation of ethnicities, and mainly around three bodies: the white British, the Afro-Caribbeans, and also the South Asians. Okay, and to a large extent, those ethnic groups are still very discernible in Bradford, certainly where when I first arrived. The problem is, you put in that triangle a Brazilian. Now, if I was your stereotypical looking Brazilian, I could hide quite well with the Afro-Caribbeans. Because I'm not, I can probably hide well with the white British. I certainly can't hide quite well with the South Asians. But the problem is, I go to a British pub, okay, and in Bradford, because of the history in Bradford, as soon as you walk in, and in some of the pubs I was going in, you would see people with shaved heads and line tattoos widespread. And as soon as I would say, it's my round, let me get you guys a drink, as soon as I speak, I cannot pass as one of you guys. Okay, and occasionally we had to leave the pub a little bit rushed to avoid certain conflicts, let's be like that.
Yeah. So, Bradford was interesting.
Yep.
So you were then married to Jess, married in Nottingham, and spent 3 years, is that right, as a youth minister?
Yes, in West Bridgeford, in the south of Nottingham.
And then moved to Southall.
In Southwell.
Go on, tell us a little bit about Southall.
So that's it. We had our first 3 years in West Bridgeford. We had a great time there, a great time of learning and ministry as well, and God really blessed that time. And an opportunity arose in Southwell, and that's where the diocese headquarters is. So the Southwell Minster is there, and Holy Trinity Southwell, which is the low church, in there. And we went there to serve. We served there for 5 years, almost 6 years. It's 5.5 years, so I say 6 years, she says 5. And we had the most wonderful time as well there, in which I think we arrived there and we were given 3 beautiful young people. That was it. There were children in the church, but there were 3 young people. And God was just so kind that throughout the time, which was one of the happiest times of our lives, fair to say, we saw not just the number of young people coming to faith increase drastically, but also we saw the depth of their faith growing as well. And right now, they are leaders of their churches in Sheffield, in London, and other parts of the country. And the impact of that generation that they are having now, as they are about 30 something now, so they're about 10 years in, they me and Jessica, they are now the movers and shakers of their churches. And the privilege and honor to serve there in that generation was phenomenal. Yeah.
So you were there, you went to Holy Trinity, and sort of were again a senior youth minister there, I think. Mm-hmm. And so spent about 11 years in total in sort of youth ministry, roughly.
Yes, 10 years.
And then decided to become ordained. So tell us about that, what happened there, because obviously that would involve you moving.
It did, and I think Jessica always knew that was going to happen. It's just, but the funny thing was, the Church of England has these people who help you discern your vocation, called DDOs, Director of Ordinance. There's another D there for something. And Diocesan Director of Ordinance. Thank you. And I should know that, shouldn't I? And when I wanted to see the guy, he was like, "Oh, finally you've come." So it was like, because the headquarters were there, and we had been in the diocese for more than 10 years. I think everyone knew that the time was coming, and really the process of discernment we're talking about months from starting the process. But during that time I was giving a spiritual director, and his name is Ian Bunty. He has written loads of books, and he's a theological, he used to be a theological inspector, he's retired now. And it was a real gift for me, for my own personal growth. And Ian came with his wife Maya. Maya was a speech therapist, and I'm looking at Emily now. And Maya, when I went to see Ian for the first time, and I finished my first hour of speech direction with him, Maya just said, "Can we chat?" And she said, "Luiz, I've been waiting to get my hands on you." And Maya spent a year of her life meeting with me every Thursday morning for an hour. We would read the Bible together, and she would just be circling words that maybe could improve in my addiction. I never want, and I never will want to lose my accent. I think that's something I'm sorry if you think my English is not good enough. It's as good as it will get. But there was a point where I could have taken it further, and actually I chose not to, because I think I would lose something of myself in that. Yes. But Maya gave so much of herself to allow me to at least communicate well, which is part of the preaching of the gospel.
Yeah. So you went through training,
yep.
And then you became a curate. Tell us about, because you talk about my vicar, I think. Is that right? Is that right?
Yes. So Holy Trinity time, it was such a lovely time in Southwell. With the vicar there. I still call him my vicar, if you like, because he was such a blessing in my life. And he was not a blessing for any direct input. He was a blessing for just leaving the door open. The answer with him was always yes, unless it had to be no. And I think that's a model that I carry with me. The answer is always yes. So if you ever have to hear a no from me, it's probably there's some really, really good reason that you may not even know. But he invested in me like that, just give me the autonomy to grow in Christ. And that was fantastic. So we went to Bristol, 3 years training in Bristol where I did my BA, and then we moved to workshop. And Jessica, of course, is my go-to source of knowledge for English things, okay? So I said, "Jessica, tell me about workshop." And she said, "I don't know much about workshop." So we had to discover that together.
So, and we'll have a bit of music in just a second. So, when you became curate there, what was your aim? I mean, because you've been in ministry for quite a long time. So, what did you hope to achieve or get out of that curacy time?
So the goal was just one, was to get my head around those things that make the Church of England really, really English. So I knew what my goals were to learn how to do a good funeral, if that can be said. But it can be said, to do a good funeral, to do a good wedding, and to do a good baptism. That's what I wanted to get. And after the first year of curacy, I got it. Because I think I did 30 weddings on my first year, about 40 baptisms, and however many funerals. It was brutal. But it served the purpose. So by the first year, I felt that I've done quite well. And then I was priested in the weddings that started at the end of the first year when I was priested, to which the incumbent said, "By the way, I'm off." So I stayed there for just over 2 years, but 6 months of that was interregnum. But we had a great time, and leading the church, let's face it, friends, actually, can I be honest with you, leading the church is not hard. Leading the church is not hard. Because we all depend on the Holy Spirit. Whether we grow as a church in numbers or not, it's totally relies on the Holy Spirit. We just join the fun and join the party. Caring for God's people. is the joy and the hard work, because sometimes we move on. But all that, I knew what to do already, and with great joy. But I got what I needed out of the first 2 years, and the good job I did, because that's how long my career lasted.
Yes. Let's have the next bit of music, and then we'll sort of think about workshop after that.
That's lovely. So this song is probably not you will probably know the song, but actually it became really important for us as a family, because it nurtured us spiritually during lockdown. And even to this day, the children still ask us to play that. But I think it really spoke to our nation and the whole world during a time of lockdown.
So obviously you thought you might end up, so Simon the vicar left, and you thought you might stay there as vicar there, but actually the bishop had other plans for you, and you ended up in Christchurch in Worksop. So that was obviously such a huge thing for you to take on your own church there. Tell us some sort of your highlights in Worksop, in Christchurch and the other church there.
It was great, and similar to what I've done here at St. John's, I said to Christchurch, there was another candidate for the post, and lovely guy, and actually I still keep in touch with him. And I said to the interview, look, you've got a guy here who is a teacher. Okay, he will teach you the Word of God really skillfully so, and really well. And if that's what you want, he is your person. Okay, I can teach. I can just about preach a little bit well, but there is a heart of an evangelist here. I want to build a family that will never be so exclusive as to make others feel unwelcomed. And I said, if you are not game for mission, I'm not your man. And I think I said something similar here, because I think it's important that this is a process that actually is a two-way communication where you're deciding to go for church. And actually, if you are not ready for me, well, you need to tell me. And if I'm not ready for you, vice versa as well. It's a two-way street. And they were ready, as I think St. John's is ready too. And we had so much fun. I think the PCC had a few heart attacks with me. I don't think anyone actually died. I'm looking just for verification on that because of me, literally. But we had so much fun. But I stretched them. And so I remember when we got there and we had a 9 o'clock service, which is quite similar to our 9:30. Although they didn't have a choir. Where's my choir? There you go. And a beautiful 9:30 service. Where's Cliff? They only do prayer H there. Okay, so here we go. We have to up our game here. And then our 11 o'clock service, and another 11 o'clock service at St. Luke's. The St. Luke's was a bit more like our 9:30 here as well. And an evening service with worship and praise. That was the format. 4 services in one Sunday. So life is quite manageable here. And but 11 o'clock at Christchurch, in a beautiful building which was only 30 years old. So central heating, he had it all. All the modern stuff was already in place. But this 11 o'clock Sunday service had 7 adults and 4 children, of which 2 were my boys, so they don't really count. And to say that it was urgent to actually engage in mission, it's an understatement, isn't it? So we spoke to them. I think I gave them 3 months grace, and then we started pushing the boat. We reshuffled the service and made sure that the service was liturgically apt to welcome children and people. But we knew that part of our worship was the noise of our children running. And there I said that there isn't a single church in the country currently that has got enough children. There isn't a single church in the country currently that has got enough children. So if you ever see a child running make noise in your service or in your church, just thank God for that. Just thank God for that. And so we put the structures in place, and we connect with the local schools, and we start praying. And there are times when Jessica and I go back home on our knees crying, because actually on a low Sunday, okay, if it's a low Sunday here, maybe we've got 60 people. On a low Sunday there, it was 2 people, it was me and Jessica in there. for that service. And sometimes we're like, God, what are you doing? But He was faithful. And we did some amazing stuff. We did a party service, which was a theme service with everyone with eye patches and everything else. And we got someone from the CBBC, someone who has become a friend, who leads the Swashbuckle program on CBBC on TV. If you've got children, grandchildren, know that. And Gemma, just I don't know why, but she just came, didn't she? And she came a few times and helped us. And by Gemma coming, we became the family church of the area. And Gemma, hopefully, will be coming here next year. Okay, pray for that. But we just went daring. There was nothing. There was no fear of failure. If we failed, fine, but put together and try again. We learn with failures, and yet we're so stifled in our own minds sometimes that we are scared of disappointing. And my job was to be a human shield. If you fail, you never failed. We failed. I failed. We tried, which is better than just be still doing nothing. And so we got we had a driving service in lockdown, where we had hundreds of cars coming into a Tesco car park and giant cinema screens that we hired, and so people could come and have the carol service because church wasn't allowed anymore. And that was great. What no one knows is the giant screens company cancelled on me 3 weeks before the service. No one hears those stories, do they? And of course I had to reinvent that we would make it happen, and I got another company off Wigan. My wife is a saint, I'm telling you, because she probably was the only one of the few people who knew this story. We had a nice drink coming for our Christmas party. Trouble was the company gave me photos and profiles and portfolios of what I was paying for, and what was delivered was somewhat below what I was expecting. And we had to reinvent the wheel, but there was that attitude, actually, wait a second, there's a challenge here, hands together, and let's make it happen. Okay, there was never a finger pointing, never a judgmental attitude. We are just so united, and I hope I can build something here as well. So we did it all, from solar panels to climbing the walls of the church. We pushed those churches to the limit, and what happened is, in doing so, we left there, which I think is our participation. I won't say our gift, but it's not our gift. It's Christ's gift that He used us, and all of the services have grown, but that 11 o'clock especially has left there now with close to 80 adults. Close to 30 children and about 15 young people coming every Sunday. That service itself is now what we call a medium-sized church in its own right. Plus, of course, the other services, which makes the church more or less the same size as St. John's, a bit bigger.
Yeah. So obviously that was a fantastic time there, and you felt very much at home. I remember when we were watching you streamed, I know you watched that stream, but when we were watching you streamed, you were saying that you'd imagine you'd stay there and retire there. So what happened? How did you end up here? Why didn't you stay in Worksop?
Yes.
In the nicest possible way.
Are we to pack our bags next? No, I think it was about April time this year. And we sat down, we looked at each other and said, now we worked so hard. Now I think we can make ministry more manageable here now, and maybe can enjoy some of the fruits of our labor. And in doing so, we can just maintain growth rather than being so desperate. Because if we hadn't addressed things, the church probably by now, with age changes and everything, probably would be a very small church now, and the future of the church would be at risk. So we thought, no, we got something beautiful happening here. Something really exciting, 20 different nationalities in that church alone. And so, let's do that. I have got two self-supporting ministers, 4 readers. We had a good team there now that we built. And so, as soon as we said that, as soon as we said, we are here to stay now, we know what to do, da da da, as soon as we said that, God started moving in a different direction. So watch out, guys, when you think you're comfortable. But it's really interesting because you know the passage, and when you're wondering what God's voice is, and you think it's in the fire, or the earthquake, or the whirlwind, I would say actually none of the three. God take me out of workshop would have take an explosion of an atomic bomb or something as big as that. And it was none of that. It was the gentle whisper, little by little. He was just put in our hearts, and of course as Nathan, I think, went through his own journey of getting ready for secondary school, that became kind of an optimum time for that. But even his own journey of discovering autism as well. We always knew that Nathan had more energy than most, even me, and but actually he's learning. His own learning development. We knew that there was something, and that took us to a journey to find him to be diagnosed with autism. So all these little things coming together, they all came together really well. And then Jessica's brother preached here at St. John's, and so when I stumbled upon St. John's profile, because a friend of mine also was looking to moving, and I said, "Oh, this one looks good for you." And then he said, no, this one looks good for you, Luiz, actually. But I'm not moving, you are, but no, but this is good for you. And so we kind of, so Marcus said, oh, actually, it's interesting you mentioned St. John's. I preached at St. John's a couple of years ago, maybe, I don't know how long ago. And Marcus knew Gavin and Hazel quite well. And in fact, they lived quite close at some point in Winchester. So I found myself having a chat with Gavin. And I make no secrets to say that Gavin was instrumental with Hazel at our coming here. They spoke so highly of you, and with so much love, even though God has led him to a different direction. And so it kept feeding us. And I think that the confirmation that God really wants us to come here was when we came to spy on you. We came on a Friday morning. Where's my Roger? Where's my Roger gone? He's hiding somewhere. I can't see Roger. Oh, he's gone. And we're arriving here, and Roger just welcomed the boys. So special. There were others. Where's Derek and the three sisters? Yeah, they're here. You were doing flower arrangements and everything else. And it was just special. It was so around, and we thought, wow, this looks special. The people, the welcome that the boys received was really telling for us as well. And so that day was really special for us. But I think Tommy and Liz, you did your homework far too well on us, because at the end of our little day journey spying on you, Tommy and Liz took us to Melhor shore, and the tide was low. The little sandbank, do you know the one? Yeah, was showing. And as we're trying to pay for the car park, the boys had already stripped off and go away in the sea swimming. And I look at Jessica and say, they knew what they're doing. These guys are dangerous. Careful with them.
And so you ended up here. Have you got your last piece of music? What's your last piece of music?
My last piece of music is very similar and produced by the same people who did the last version of the UK Blessing. So it's a very similar video in the same context. But I think what it shows me is it spoke a lot to me, because throughout lockdown, as we're emerging out of it, workshop is such a monochromatic culture. Okay, former mining community, British class, and what emerged out of that was a rise in diversity of ethnicities. That I thank God that He was able to use me to minister. And the next song shows not only a diverse of ethnicities of people coming together to sing, but also a diverse of languages. And that to me became very telling of that time in which actually, if you told that you were going to create a multicultural church in Workshop, everyone would laugh at you, and that's exactly the legacy that we are leaving behind there. A church that is totally multicultural. And I wonder if that is something that God might be bringing to us here as well, in some degree.
The mere fact that so many people are here to hear you talk would say that you are very, very, very welcome here, Luiz. And, you know, it's been a real blessing so far. And we're looking forward to, you know, the years to come. We've talked quite a lot about Christianity, and I'd like to talk just a bit before we finish about religion. Mm-hmm. Football. Tell us about you and football.
Right. Things happen. I think sometimes God gives you a gifting, and then He increases that gifting. So in Brazil, my dad was a semi-professional player, okay, and he had to choose between civil engineering and football. And bless his socks, that my brother had no interest in football whatsoever. At the time, ladies football wasn't very developed, so my sister really never got to play much. And so he had all his hopes on me. And I was a pretty average player in Brazil, I must say. And I could see every time I was playing with him, it was a really hard work because he was such a better player than me. However, and God does his thing sometimes, and I remember getting the plane and coming to England. And something happened in that plane that physiologically changed me. And as soon as I landed in the UK, I automatically became a much better player. Don't kill me. So I've always played football, but sitting here in the UK, I learned how to play far better, and enjoy playing. Although I did have what seemed to have been a double knee injury 2 years ago, so I haven't played properly for 2 years now. But I'm building up my fitness levels again to start playing. So I played a couple of times here in Loxheath already. But if you see me stretched on, in the hospital, you probably know that I probably still think I'm a 17-year-old.
I don't normally take requests for questions from people when preparing.
But you're going to do that, aren't you?
No, but I've had one repeated question that people have asked me, and I must have had about 6 or 7 people ask me the same question to ask you. So this is sort of my final question before we sort of round up, which is that if Brazil sort of scrape through in the World Cup to the final and play England, who are you going to support?
I am a patriot when it comes to Brazil. I'm a good national, I've got my British passport, and I'll support you guys for as long as we don't play each other. But there's a problem with that, okay? Because given any time in my lifetime, that's okay. But there's a lot at stake here, because the boys have never seen England play Brazil. So I know that next time we play, and I think there's a friendly coming in a few months' time, whoever wins that game, maybe not the friendly, but certainly if it's a competitive match, it will be the team that the boys will end up supporting. And I must confess with you, today's squad, Brazil squad, is the worst Brazil football team I've ever seen in my life. So I probably will need some prayer ministry very soon, because I think the boys will betray me.
We're drawing to a close, and I've not done all that well, I'm really sorry. If you were to choose just one piece of music out of the 6 that you've had, which one would you take to the desert island with you? Just one of them.
Just one? I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Oh.
I'm sorry.
Oh, look at I've got my list here. Oh, I think the first one.
First one.
I think the first one.
Okay.
It's me through and through.
Yeah. And assuming that we give you the Bible and the complete works of Shakespeare,
yep.
What other book would you take with you to the island?
See, God clearly wanted me to come to the UK at some point, because I remember, I think I was about 10, and I found these 2 books in my parents' library. and the two of them were by a kind of vaguely known author called Agatha Christie. Okay, so I read the Orient Express and of course Styles, and so I chose Styles.
And finally, if you had one luxury, what would you take with you on the island? One luxury.
Now I need clarification, okay, otherwise I have to change my luxury item.
Okay.
Okay, because it has to come with what it needs to function, okay?
Yes.
So I want to bring my coffee machine.
And a generator.
In that case, just a present.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a real pleasure to do this. Can I give you Luiz Lima?